right, 5 minutes after 9 o'clock, it is time for Veterans News. Remember, today's program is a full hour long, and you'll have an opportunity to ask two doctors today, some important health questions. And the number will be, when we get to that point, 622-9622. Let me now introduce you to Gary Pascale, sitting in the captain's seat. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, veterans, and good morning, listeners. We do have to start off the morning, Larry, unfortunately, with a lot of casualties, and a lot of them military. But I'll go ahead and start with the U.S. Fire Administration that's reported the death of a couple of firefighters here. And we're going to start with Fire Captain John Kemper, who was with the St. Louis Fire Department in St. Louis, Missouri. His date of death was July the 12th. And also, we have Interim Fire Chief Robert Spinner, who was with the Linden Fire Department in Linden, Washington. His date of death was July the 14th. And we have a police officer to report, Trooper Michael Paul Stewart III of the Pennsylvania State Police, whose end of watch was Friday, July the 4th, and he was killed as a result of a vehicular crash. Now, the U.S. Department of Defense, and I sadly report this, has released the names of the 15 United States Marines and the 1 U.S. Navy sailor that were killed in the plane crash of that C-130T transport plane that crashed in Mississippi. And I'm going to start with Corporal Daniel L. Bladesare, Major Kane Goyette, Captain Sean E. Elliott, Gunnery Sergeant Mike A. Hopkins, Gunnery Sergeant Brendan C. Johnson, Staff Sergeant Joshua M. Snowden, Sergeant Julian M. Cavini, Sergeant Owen J. Lennon, Corporal Daniel Bladishare, Corporal Colin J. Sharaff, Staff Sergeant Robert H. Cox, Staff Sergeant William J. Kundrent, Sergeant Chad E. Jensen, Sergeant Talon R. Leash, Sergeant Joseph J. Murray, Sergeant Dietrich A. Scheiman, and our Navy person, Petty Officer Second Class Ryan M. Lowry. Our thoughts and our prayers go out to the families of these firefighters, this officer, and these 15 Marines and the U.S. Navy corpsmen who have perished. Larry?
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I
Well, we want to take a minute here before we introduce our guest. And, our guest today, seeing this is the third Thursday, is Dr. Torres and Dr. E from the Ocala CBOC, who's got a great show planned for you today. And they're going to be talking about COPD, an awful epidemic almost, we might as well call it, that, seems to be around with us lately. But before we do that, we want to thank the folks at WOCA here for putting us on every week, and without them, we couldn't do it. And the great folks at Bob Wine's Camellia Garden and Nursery, who are located at who are located at 2610 Southeast 38th Street in our own beautiful Ocala. And when it comes to your landscaping needs, Bob Wines has it. Everything from small plants to large trees, mulch, fertilizer, and much more. Bob Wines will deliver, they'll plant what they deliver, and they'll guarantee their trees. Bob Wines Camellia Gardens and Nursery has been keeping things blooming in Ocala since 1952, and you can contact them at area code 352-629-5766. And when you get there and you purchase your plants, let them know you heard about them on WOCA and show them proof that you're a veteran, and you'll get a 10% discount. You can't beat a deal like that, and there's no excuse not to go buy your plants, because we're getting plenty of rain lately to keep those plants nice and healthy. And also, we want to thank the great folks at Hires Baxley Funeral Services and Highland Memorial Park. Hires Baxley has had generations of families honor them with their trust and their confidence. And they believe it's because over the last 128 years, their team of caring professionals have established a reputation of serving families with excellence and compassion. Hires Baxley currently partners with the Boy Scouts of America, Troop Number 72, to properly dispose of decommissioned American flags. They are also a drop-off location for the program Cell Phones for Soldiers, helping to provide minutes that matter and helping heroes home. Hires Baxley is located at 910 East Silver Springs Boulevard in our own beautiful Ocala, or you can call them if you have any questions at area code 352-629-7171, or information can also be found at hiresbaxley.com. And I do have a few announcements here that Joe handed me right before the show. The homeless shelter for veterans is in need of men's bicycle. Now, they need anything that's in reasonable shape, that they can fix up. You can see Ronnie or call Ronnie, so take this number down, 352-438-3354. Again, that's 352-438-3354. Also, the Marion County Veteran Service is offering assistance with benefits in some alternative locations, so I want to go ahead and give them to you. Now, their regular location is at 2730 East Silver Springs Boulevard, right there with us, Vets Helping Vets. That's how I know the address by heart, Larry. But these alternative locations, if you can't get to our beautiful location, on July 22nd, they're going to be at the Bellevue Public Library, and this is going to be from 10 a.m. to noon, okay? And the times are the same, okay? So on August 12th, they're going to be at the Forest Community Center, okay? Which is 777 South Highway 314A in Ocklawaha. August 19th, they're going to be in the Silver Springs Shore Community at the Silver Springs Shore Community Youth Center, 590 Silver Road in Ocala. August 26th, they'll be in Marion Oaks Community Center, which is at 294 Marion Oaks Lane in Ocala. And on September 9th, they'll be at the VFW Post 7991, which is at 3107 West Denellen Road in Denellen. So if you need these services, they're open to you, and you can call the office at or the media contact would be 352-438-2311, and that's the public information specialist. So, if you need these benefits, go ahead and get in and take advantage of this.
Gary, we're up against a break, so why don't we take a break and then you can introduce your guests today. Okay. We'll take a little break. Remember, today's show is a full hour long, plenty of information and access to the information by either simply listening or by calling in if you have a question. The number is 622-9622. We'll be right back with Veterans News after this.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. On this Thursday, times of clouds and sun with a shower and thunderstorm around during the afternoon hours, high 87 to 91. Patchy clouds Thursday nights, low 72 to 76. For Friday and Saturday, intervals of clouds and sun with a thunderstorm or two in the area each afternoon, the high both days between 90 and 94. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
We all know that sound means there's going to be some need for collision repair work, and soon. What you may not know is that it's your choice where to have that collision work done, not the other guy's insurance company. Because your vehicle is much more than just transportation. It's like a family member. So don't bring it to just any chain collision center. Bring it to Lyle's Collision Service. When it comes to getting your vehicle back to 100%, you can count on Lyle's Collision Service. They're not some fly-by-night chain company. They're a family-owned and run collision center with over 33 years of experience. Working with collision repairs and vehicle restoration, Lyle's Collision only uses quality parts and doesn't take shortcuts like some other companies. They take pride in getting the job done right and in a timely manner. They specialize in insurance claims and they strive to get your vehicle back to you as soon as possible. So the next time you hear this, remember, it's your choice. And the choice is clear. Lyle's Collision Service.
Langley Health Services, located at 7205 Southeast Merricamp Road in Ocala, is a federally qualified health center offering family practice, pediatrics, podiatry, dental, behavioral health, and radiology services. Most insurance accepted, sliding scale for those who qualify, and same-day appointments available until 4 p.m. with board-certified family practice and internal medicine physicians on staff. Langley Health Services, call today 352-680-7000.
All right, 18 minutes after 9 o'clock, 77 degrees here at the studios of The Source. Let's return now to Veterans News. Gary Pascale sitting in the captain's seat. Gary?
Yeah, Dr. Torres, if you want to go ahead and make the introduction for yourself and Dr. E, we'll get on with this great show you got planned for us this morning.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Ocala. Good morning, veterans. Today, we are going to talk about COPD. With me is Dr. Eskelson, is one of the providers in primary care of the clinic.
Good morning.
And our show today is dedicated to lung diseases, mainly COPD. That is a condition that is affecting a lot of people in the United States and outside the United States. So, Dr. E, can you tell us how is COPD defined according to the World Health Organization?
Yeah, I love the abbreviation for World Health Organization. WHO? Yeah, WHO. You see that all the time. It was declared by who? No, that's the World Health Organization. And they define it as a progressive airflow limitation of the lungs, and it's caused by abnormal inflammatory responses from inhalation of irritating particles and gases. Primarily in the United States, that's from cigarette smoking. In other parts of the world, actually using biofuels, such as cooking over wood, over grass, and actually some people actually gather up animal droppings when it's dried out, and that works quite well as a fuel. Those also can be a cause of it. It's considered the fourth ranking cause of death worldwide, and unfortunately that's expected to rise to third by about 2030 because as opposed to many of the other causes of death worldwide, COPD death rate is actually not decreasing. It may be increasing slightly, whereas the other causes of death are decreasing. In the U.S., about 15 million adults have COPD, and it's at an expense of about $32 billion. That's billion with a B in direct care, and also $4 billion in lost opportunities, lost work, and productivity estimated as a total expense. So that's quite a bit of expense and cost, as well as the quality of life that is lost with that. One thing I would just like to go over, we talk about progressive airflow limitation in lungs. If you'll indulge me for a moment, I'll just go over a very brief summary of how the air moves in and out of the lungs. When we breathe in, it goes through the air in the nose and is very quickly warmed up and humidified to the body's air temperature. Then it goes down, we call it the windpipe, the official word for it's the trachea, down to where it splits to go into the right and left lung, to the main stem bronchi is what they are. These go into ever smaller little passages called bronchi and then bronchioles, and it finally ends up in the terminal structure called where the terminal bronchioles meet these alveoli, which are the little air sacs where the actual exchange takes place. That little structure, the bronchiole, terminal bronchiole, and the air sacs or alveoli is called the acinus, A-C-I-N-U-S. That's the structure that's affected by the COPD. And so anything that interferes with flow in and out of there will affect your breathing, how exchange goes on to get rid of the carbon dioxide and to get oxygen into the body.
Thank you. How is COPD comprised?
The COPD, chronic obstructive lung disease, has two components. One is chronic bronchitis, which is involved with chronic coughing and a lot of mucus production, and the other is involved with emphysema. Emphysema, you can imagine a whole bunch of little bubbles, like when you're doing the dishes, you've got all these little bubbles. Imagine those are alveoli. If you get one that gets big, it displaces all these alveoli, and it makes it so that there's like a ballooning type of effect, and that's called emphysema. And that can affect the elasticity of the lung. It takes away diffusing capacity, where the oxygen inside the lungs can be transferred to the blood vessels, and that total surface area in a normal lung, where the exchange of oxygen between the blood and the lungs, if totally flattened out, I've been told, would be about the same as the surface area of a tennis court.
Wow.
Which is really huge.
Wow.
But unfortunately, if we get the emphysema, these little big bubbles come, they displace all the smaller ones, it reduces the surface area so it can be considerably less.
Wow.
Yes. So about the chronic bronchitis, we have that is defined as a cough with sputum production most days for 3 months, or more per year for 2 consecutive years. It's a condition that is irreversible. It's related to the hyperplasia and hypertrophy of goblet cells, which are cells that make the mucus inside the bronchi. Also, inflammatory lining of the airways, thickening of the walls of the airways, and narrowing of air passages, decreasing the amount of air flow in and out. And that causes scarring of and changes of the lining of the airways. So basically, it's like having a cold, and the wheezing sound and obstruction of the airway. It's like you can inhale the air, but you can let the air going out, and you technically asphyxiate in your own air and your own secretions with the mucus production.
Wow.
Mainly, the people, when they start having chronic bronchitis, they just have a cough and some mucus coming out, and that's okay for them. They think that's not a problem. And then eventually, with the time pass, gets worse and worse and worse if the person have the injuring factor present, that we're going to speak about which injuring factors cause chronic bronchitis and emphysema. Dr. E, what is the difference between acute and chronic bronchitis?
Well, the acute bronchitis is something that we've all had at one time or another, and it's usually caused by a virus, but can also be caused by bacterial infection, and it can last days, weeks, or sometimes months, but it eventually gets better. And sometimes months. We've heard of whooping cough. It's a disease that fortunately has been pretty much eradicated by vaccines, but it's still in adults. it may cause as much as 20-25% of the bronchitis we get, especially if we haven't kept up off our immunizations. A few years ago, we were just giving the tetanus diphtheria immunizations, but it became apparent that it was worthwhile to continue the whooping cough, even though it's not devastating in adults like it is in children when they get that. And unfortunately, one of the nicknames of the whooping cough in adults was the 100-day cough. It's an acute bronchitis, but it lasts for some time, but not as long as the emphysema does. I'm sorry, the chronic bronchitis does. Chronic bronchitis is a progressive disease that does not get better. Sometimes we can stabilize it, but it's not something you're going to recover with a treatment of antibiotics, which in most cases bronchitis really isn't indicated, but with a treatment of one sort or another, it doesn't get better on its own or resolve. It just keeps on going. As it mentioned, they said sometimes with the diagnosis, by the definition, you look at 2 years of symptoms with that type of thing, at least 3 months consecutively every year.
I have a question about mucus, if it's okay.
Absolutely.
I was always under the impression that mucus is created by the lungs as a means to expel things that shouldn't be in there.
That's exactly right.
And so when we take a decongestant, it kind of counters what the body's trying to do to help us. Mm-hmm. Does the same thing apply when it's chronic or when it's as severe as you're talking about?
It certainly can. We talk about when you're dealing with occupational health, we talk about respirable particles that can get all the way down into the air sacs. And it's surprising, there's a very narrow range of size with those. It's between about 2 and 10 microns. For reference, a bacteria is about 1 to 2 microns in size. So that's very, very small particles. Wow. Smaller than that, you just breathe them right back out again. Larger than that, they pile up on the linings of the bronchial tubes, and it's the mucus's job to latch onto those and then be gradually migrated out when we have our normal coughing and stuff. That's the job of the mucus, is to get rid of the dust and the particles that don't make it all the way down and don't make it all the way out as well. And with they were talking about hypertrophy, in other words, enlargement and increasing in number of the mucus cells in the chronic bronchitis, and that's because of the irritation of whatever smoke or inhaled particles is causing that. Right. So it becomes excessive, it becomes pathologic rather than protective.
Is that what, when we get too much, is that what pneumonia is?
Pneumonia is an infection, and it does a whole bunch of things, but it does increase the mucus production. It also increases the leakiness of the blood vessels, so you have more fluid getting out in there, and then that helps wash stuff out, but also can be very dangerous if you have a severe pneumonia.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So then does pneumonia sometimes
can be
part, but is part of COPD? Does it happen? Is it not unusual to see pneumonia in somebody who's got COPD?
Unfortunately, it's very common, and that's one reason why we recommend getting the influenza virus vaccine and also the pneumonia vaccines.
We are almost up against the break. Let me just announce the phone number. There's a half hour left in this show, which means plenty of time for you to call in with your questions. You mentioned off the air before we went on the air that COPD is very common. Even Joe mentioned that his wife has it as well. So if you have any questions about COPD, this is a great time to call. Dr. Torres and Dr. Eskelson will be answering your questions. We'll be right back with Veterans News on the other side of the break. This is The Source, WOCA. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. On this Thursday, times of clouds and sun with a shower and thunderstorm around during the afternoon hours, high 87 to 91. Patchy clouds Thursday night, low 72 to 76. For Friday and Saturday, intervals of clouds and sun with a thunderstorm or two in the area each afternoon, the high both days between 90 and 94. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Don't miss the program Higher Education Happenings. It'll be on WOCA The Source on Tuesday, July 25th at 10:35 a.m. Mike Fallon from Webster University will be hosting a panel of educational experts from the College of Central Florida, the University of Central Florida, and of course, Webster University. They'll be speaking to us about educational opportunities right here in our area, all on the program called Higher Education Happenings on The Source, WOCA 96.3 FM, 1370 a.m.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Senator John McCain and his family reviewing options after being diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer. His presidential running mate in 2008, Sarah Palin, saying,
obviously he is a fighter, and if I were going to war, I wouldn't want McCain on my side. I'd want him leading the charge.
Senator McCain's daughter and our very own colleague, Meghan McCain, writing this: he is the toughest person I know. The cruelest enemy could not break him.
Fox's Jackie Ibanez. The American Cancer Society puts the 5-year survival rate for patients over 55 at about 4%. The president airing frustrations about his attorney general for recusing himself in the Russia meddling probe.
And if he was going to recuse himself, he should have told me before he took the job, and I would have picked somebody else.
Speaking to the New York Times, Fox News, we report, you decide.
Napa know-how. Buckets are good. Good at storing, carrying, and hauling all kinds of stuff. But the Napa bucket for $3.99 does more good than that. Like getting you 20% off 3 or more items that fit inside. And donating $1 to the Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund. So do our soldiers and yourself some good. And save 20% with the Napa bucket. That's Napa know-how. Napa know-how. At participating Napa Auto Parts stores while supplies last. Exclusions apply. Offer expires 7/31/17.
There are 2 things every parent wants when their child goes to college: for their child to do well and a way to afford it. Now, with Discover Student Loans, parents can have the best of both worlds. Not only do our loans cover up to 100% of school-certified costs with 0 fees, but we'll give them a cash reward for each new student loan if they earn at least a 3.0 GPA or equivalent. That means every A in history or B in math could help them earn a cash reward for good grades. Just one of the many ways we treat you like you'd treat you. Apply now in 15 minutes or less at discoverstudentloans.com. Limitations apply.
You've got a garden and we've got a show for you called You've Got a Garden with your host, Master Gardener Carol Ann Baldwin. Carol Ann answers your questions about your flowers, your veggies, your grass, your trees, even questions about your bugs. And she's only on WOCA, so don't miss Carol Ann Baldwin and You've Got a Garden each Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on WOCA The Source.
All right, 28 minutes before 10 o'clock. It is 78 degrees here at the studios. Temperatures are expected to climb to 90 degrees, and there is a 70% chance we'll see rain either this afternoon or early this evening. Let's return now to Veterans News. Gary Pascale, Dr. Eccleston, and Dr. Torres are all here to answer your questions. Gary would be here for Vets Helping Vets, and the doctor's here talking about your health. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Larry. So what is emphysema and how is classified? Which type is more common? Well, starting with the definition of emphysema, like it was mentioned before by Dr. Eskelson, is an enlargement of the air spaces distal to terminal bronchioles in the alveoli, which are the little packet, or I call it the bubble wraps, like the bubble wraps in the packages that we receive in the mail. It's a reduction of the elastic recoil and reduction of the surface area that is compared to soap pseudous analogy. So you have an area that has a big airspace, and the interchange between oxygen and CO2 is not adequate. And that it causes increase in CO2, making our body feel tired. A lot of issues related to components in the cells that are not receiving the oxygen that is the fuel that they need to keep the body moving. In the acinus, that is a very diminutive microscopic unit, the alveoli and the associated structures served by the terminal bronchial are affected. We have different type of emphysema, acinus emphysema, pan-acinar emphysema, and centriacinar emphysema. And depending of the location is where the affection is. The pan-acinar emphysema involves the whole acini and the terminal bronchial and is related to congenital disease called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency enzyme. And the centriacinar emphysema is located mainly in the upper lobes in smokers and primarily involve the bronchial. So what are the risk factors for COPD, Dr. A?
Well, the biggest one that we have in the United States is smoking, but inhalation of other things, particles that are irritants or certain types of gases, can do the same as well. And in developing countries where we mentioned earlier we use biofuels, the smoke from that can be irritating enough that it can actually cause this to happen along the way. I'm not sure if that means I'm going to stop my hot dog roasts or barbecue, but the smoke from that, if inhaled on a routine basis, daily basis, actually could cause some problems. So just try and stay downwind of smoke if you reasonably can. Now, smoking, if you smoke a cigarette or two, that's not going to do a thing. But if you smoke, say, a pack a day for 40 years, get that 40 pack year history, we call that, that pushes you into the area where there's a much higher risk. Some people get the effects of it from less exposure, but the 40 pack year is kind of where we draw the line, where we need to watch for it. There's quite a bit of individual susceptibility. In other words, 15% of smokers get COPD, which means there's some that don't, and we don't know who the lucky ones are and who the unfortunate ones are either. Some other things that might aggravate, they've talked about possibly air pollution. That might be a minor factor, but it's not nearly as big as other particles that come with the smoke. Certain occupational exposures where you're involved in certain industrial dusts or mining type of things may aggravate it a little bit. And there's certain other types of diseases that can be brought on by certain chemicals. We've heard of the 1984 episode in Bhopal, India, where an isocyanate was released, and it caused severe asthma in people. It had thousands of deaths regarding it. It was a terrible tragedy, and there was some chronic lung disease came out of that. Also, people with COPD tend to be colonized with bacteria and certain viruses, and so that may add a certain amount to it. Unfortunately, we can't get rid of them just with simple antibiotics. There's not really a good way to get rid of those, but it's been found. And one other thing that's been associated with it is child history of pneumonia. And what that has to do with it, I'm not sure, unless there was some sort of damage that was done, and then the irritants are built on the damage that was already there from the scarring from the pneumonia. It's hard to say. One thing I wanted to mention about with COPD, we talk about the elastic recoil of the lungs. When I was mentioning the breathing, I forgot to describe how that works. You breathe in by expanding the diaphragm, sometimes you expand the chest volume is how you breathe. That creates a negative pressure, so the positive pressure outside the body goes in, inflates the lungs like a balloon. When you breathe out, you don't force it out, you just relax, and it's the recoil that pushes that back out. Just like when you blow up a balloon, you hold on to it, you let go, it's the elastic recoil that forces the air out of the balloon.
Does living in a more arid climate help somebody with COPD?
I'm not aware that the aridity of the climate would be. The concern with that would be with a lot of dust going around that might aggravate that.
Also, a humid climate might be better, actually.
It might be to a certain degree, but you also have to worry about pollens and molds and stuff like that. So there's a whole arsenal of things out there that would like to cause us harm.
Give and take.
Yeah. And part of the risk, too, with the COPD and lung diseases, there's some antioxidant problems there. In other words, there's oxidation. Some of the chemical stuff we breathe oxidize that, and they're thinking about antioxidants as possibly helping with us. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. We had this great study. We thought, well, antioxidants may be good, so they combined vitamin A and vitamin C, and did a huge study to see if that would prevent lung disease. They stopped that midway because it was obvious that it did not stop lung disease, it caused lung disease.
Oh my gosh.
But that's an antioxidant.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit nervous about trying further trials on that.
Yeah, wow.
Doctor, when we think about cigarettes, of course everybody thinks about nicotine, but what kind of damage does the tar itself that's in a cigarette do to the lungs?
Well, that's an irritant, and it causes more mucus production. It causes a burden of more material that has to be expectorated or coughed up and out of the lungs. And it may contribute to some of the scarring that goes on. It may contribute to some of the inflammation, which thickens the airways and decreases the diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide across the membranes between the blood and the lungs. Plus, it can make them kind of dark and funny looking, but nobody can see the lungs, so...
But does that dark and funny looking result in autopsies, for example,
Yes.
give doctors a clue that even though maybe you couldn't feel it, it was actually causing problems?
Yeah. Depending of the type of the doctor, the medical examiner can have an idea in the history of the patient if that person was exposed to smoking held by cigarettes or a smoke related to cooking or work.
Really?
Or there are other medical conditions called pneumoconiosis that are related to other chemicals, like people that work in windmills, paper mills, and all that, fiberglass.
So when you go to like a fast food restaurant or any restaurant really where there's a lot of greasy food being cooked, if you have to clean the place, this used to be a restaurant, and when we tore down the walls, the back walls where they would cook had grease all over them. That from I think was open for 20 years, so it had accumulated. Does that same thing happen to the lungs of people who are standing there cooking all day long?
Well, usually that's why you have the hood. Now the restaurants has a big hood,
and that takes it out of the air.
And they have grease traps, so all the grease and fat it's supposed to be trapped there, but there's always a certain percentage of exposure during the work.
And they have OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They have industrial hygienists that go through and measure various places. And a lot of times they'll have inspections to say, are we meeting the standards? How much is allowed to get out, and how much what percentage must be evacuated by the hoods and stuff like that. So it is regulated and it is inspected to try and minimize the damage.
So I guess the real question for anybody listening, and by the way, the phone line is open if you have a question. We would love to hear from you. The number is 622-9622. But I'm just thinking, somebody with COPD listening to this, trying to come up with a conclusion, what can I do to make it easier to live with? It sounds like you have to be careful what you're breathing, and I don't know exactly how you would do that, aside from wearing a mask.
Well, that's what mainly if you have noticed in the TV, the Asians in Japan, China, and when you're watching programs or news from those countries, you see them using a mask. It's because they are always depending on the quality of the air. And if they see that if the quality of the air is not good, they use a mask automatically to protect themselves.
Oh my gosh.
And we look at them like as the strangest thing ever.
Right.
But that's what they're doing to prevent any disease
really?
Get an infection or if they see that when we see in the Weather Channel and like how the quality of the air is, we should pay attention to that, because that's a signal for those patients with asthma and COPD and emphysema, how the air quality is going to be.
If somebody with COPD and somebody without COPD is in the same room with somebody who sneezes, for example, and they both breathe in a germ, is the COPD person going to have a higher likelihood of catching whatever that was in that germ?
It can. It's more susceptible.
Really?
Because the person without COPD has the protection of the lining inside the lungs and the bronchi and the alveoli that the other person doesn't have. Like the person without COPD, I'm not saying that this person without COPD is not going to get sick, but in probability wise, it's more probable that the person with COPD can catch something that the other one is not.
Wow, so they're more vulnerable.
And if the situation is where they both get infected, the person without COPD will recover faster and recover better. But also, that's why it's important if the person who's coughing is coughing up influenza virus or is coughing up what we call the pneumococcus or the pneumonia bacteria, that's where the immunizations can be very important.
All right, we're up against a break. I would encourage you to call right now if you have a question. We've got about a 3-minute break, so if you call right now, you'll be on hold for about 3 minutes. We would love to hear from you. If you have a question, this is a great opportunity. The number is 622-9622. We'll be right back with Gary Pascale, Dr. Eskelson, and Dr. Jose Torres on the other side of the break. This is The Source, WOCA Ocala.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. On this Thursday, times of clouds and sun with a shower and thunderstorm around during the afternoon hours, high 87 to 91. Patchy clouds Thursday nights, low 72 to 76. For Friday and Saturday, intervals of clouds and sun with a thunderstorm or two in the area each afternoon, the high both days between 90 and 94. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
The very best in quality is Captain T's Upholstery.
Hey, this is Dan. Let me ask you a few questions. Does your boat look better with the cover on? Has your car's interior seen its better days? Stop using a towel to cover up those rips in the golf cart. Isn't it about time you had it restored to better than new with a custom upholstery from Captain T? Captain T's Upholstery has been right here in Ocala for nearly 20 years, so they know how to make your ride one of a kind. Whether you want to take that classic ride back to a factory look or put your favorite sports team front and center, Captain T's Upholstery is who to call. 352-369-1810. That's 352-369-1810. Or stop by their location, 5030 South Pine Avenue in Ocala, just past the drive-in. And of course, don't forget to visit them on the web, CaptainTUpholstery.com.
The very best in quality is Captain T's Upholstery.
Veterans are the foundation upon which our freedom is built. Listen to The Source, WOCA, each Thursday at 9 a.m. to Veterans News with Hank Whittier from Vets Helping Vets. You'll hear tributes, information on veterans issues, and stories that will make you laugh, cry, and feel proud. Veterans News always focuses on the military, past and present, and on our first responders. Veterans News is brought to you each week by Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens and Nursery, keeping you blooming since 1952.
My husband Ted and I have owned the Honey Baked Ham of Ocala almost 2 years, and we have customers coming in that still say, I didn't know you had a cafe, or that you do hot and cold catering for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or that you deliver. We do. Honey Baked Ham isn't just for the holidays. It's something for you to celebrate every day. Come see us at 2709 Southwest 27th Avenue, behind Best Buy and near Hollywood 16 Cinemas, or call us at 352-861-0011.
Here's what you may have missed on the John Tesh Radio Show.
Okay, barbecue fans, if you want to keep mosquitoes from biting at your barbecue without spraying your yard with unhealthy chemicals, listen carefully. Get some commercial garlic spray. Super busy equals super happy for couples most times. One light workout, like taking a walk through the park, triggered production of mood-boosting brain chemicals like dopamine, which have been shown to cut the risk of depression almost in half.
Intelligence for your life on the John Tesh Radio Show. Don't miss this stuff.
All right, 79 degrees, temperatures climbing to 90 today. There's a 70% chance we'll see rain today, most likely in the late afternoon, early evening. Let's return now to Veterans News. We've got another 12 minutes, and it's a very interesting show. We're talking about COPD. Dr. Eskelson and Dr. Torres are. And if you have a question right now, is a good time to call 622-9622. And, of course, Gary Pascale sitting here. He's not on camera right now, but he's here. With the camera on the
here.
doctors.
Dr. Torres, Dr. E, is asthma considered among the COPD categories or not?
It's an obstructive airway disease, but it's not a chronic obstructive airway disease caused by inhalation of substances that gradually cause deterioration of the lung. It does obstruct, and when we talk about obstructive, what happens, you can breathe in, but it's like that balloon I was talking about. When you let go, how it kind of, as it's going out, and it's hard to get out. You breathe in, and then it won't come out, and you get the wheezing and that sort of stuff. And there's medications that can help treat that. And some people just need the medications once in a while. Some people need it on a chronic basis, but it's a different disease than COPD, but it is an obstructive disease with a different mechanism and a different natural history. It's very common in young people and children, and young people. It can happen at all ages, and it can even happen in older people who have been fine all of their life, and it can come on. And that's people that don't have COPD can get asthma.
I noticed something real strange with me. I had it real bad as a child, and then at about 14, I didn't seem to have it anymore unless I got a cold or something. And I went like 40 years without an episode, and I changed environments to, when I worked in, and all of a sudden it came back like with a bang. Is that?
There is an allergic component to it. that may be involved with that. And then also certain things that you inhale can do that. I talked about the isocyanates. That's one type, an extreme type of thing, but certain other chemicals can cause reactive airway disease where the smooth muscle in the linings of the tubes can constrict, and then they don't want to let go like they should. I had an experience like that when I was living in Southern California and went jogging in the smog. And about 2 miles out, all of a sudden I started wheezing just like an asthmatic. I had to stop and walk very closely back. And I've never had it happen since, but it was just the irritant that caused that bronchospasm is what we call it.
Asthmatics, the difference between an asthmatic and a COPD patient, the damage is permanent in COPD. And the asthmatic, the injury is reversible. Like you have an episode, but it goes back to normal with the medications. In COPD, you can have relief, but it's not, you can have multiple exacerbations depending on the stimulations that you have.
Do you sometimes, when you're working with veterans, do you have to ask them where they served? Like a young veteran, somebody just got out. Does where they served indicate to you that maybe they were exposed to particles in the air?
Well, some of the veterans that we have that were exposed to asbestos, they have lung damage as well.
Oh my gosh!
And then we need to perform studies and screening with CT scans and a pulmonary function test to determine how bad is the limitation of the breathing in the person, and then eventually refer them to pulmonology.
We do have a phone call. I will give you a second to put the headsets on. Can you guys hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Good morning. Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Hey there. I was wondering, has there been any surveys to compare how, like, cigars or pipe smoking compared to cigarette smoking in the lungs?
Yes, there have. And cigarettes are by far the hardest on the lungs. Pipe smoking.
That makes me feel a lot better already.
Okay, well, I'm not advocating to go ahead and smoke a pipe or cigar because they do still have an effect. But it's more on.
I've tried quitting several times and always seem to go right back to doing it again after a while.
Okay, well,
I ain't found no easy way.
Yeah, of the evils, the cigarettes are the worst.
Okay, cigarettes I can live without, but my pipe I cannot.
Well, sometimes we have to take what we can get.
There you go.
I'm old. I'm probably going to die of something. So, I mean, it really don't, at my age, it don't make that much difference.
I understand. I just hope you're not in any hurry.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for calling.
Bye.
Well, I imagine that's probably a common question, isn't it?
Yeah. And there is a fact when it comes to treating any sort of disease, our medicines are not magic. They do improve outcomes as a whole, but there are some times that a person has a medicine or a treatment that they just simply cannot handle, and we have to say, accept the fact, I can't tolerate that medication because you do not want to make a person sick to try and make them well.
That's right. And talking about the symptoms of COPD, we have cough, production of phlegm, the color of the phlegm, depending on the components or irritants, it can be different colors. It can be green, yellow, black means there's tar in it, like tar, the tar that you see in the pavement. That type of tar.
Wow.
You can see blood.
That's not good, yeah.
It can be bright red, it can be brown. So depending on the color of the secretions or the mucus that you're coughing out, we can have an idea what are you having. Also, depending on the color of it, put a little rush on some studies which are x-rays, CT scans. Now the x-rays have passed to a second place, and the option, the gold standard now is a low dose CT scan, which evaluate the lungs from up and down in different cuts, and we have an idea if there's some spots in the lungs and how big they are, and depending on the size of the spots, we the pulmonologist will determine the treatment plan and if the spot need to be checked up or biopsed or keep an eye on them with another CT within 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And obviously encouraging the patient to quit smoking or the factor that is affecting the COPD.
Does COPD and heart disease go hand in hand?
Well, they're kind of woven together, kind of like a web. Having COPD does not necessarily cause heart disease, but the things that cause COPD also are risk factors for heart disease. And also, heart disease can present in an asthma-like condition. We used to call it cardiac asthma or some heart failure because they can have cough and sputum and wheezing. And so that's something that's always got to be on the back of a provider's head is this really asthma? Is this really COPD? Or is the heart playing a part in this? So they're woven together.
Got a few minutes left. If you want to squeeze in a call, you're welcome to do that. Before we do anything, though, can you give us a number at the VA so people can call you there?
The Ocala CBUC Clinic is located in Silver Springs Boulevard, 1515 East Silver Springs Boulevard, Suite 226. Phone number is 352-369-3320.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Doctor, I noticed something, I worked at a shelter for 20 years, and I always thought of COPD as an old person's disease, but we used to help young people file for Social Security, and I'm talking about, when I say young people, we had people with full-blown COPD, like at age 32, 33 years of age, which, I kind of thought was really strange. Is something changed to cause that lately, or?
It would be my guess that there's probably some genetic susceptibility that's contributing to that. Generally, it takes about 40 pack years to get full-blown COPD, so it'd be hard if they're in their 30s, they've been smoking 15 years, you'd have to be smoking 2.5, 3 packs a day to get that pack year history. It's quite possible they might have a mild antitrypsin deficiency. Antitrypsin, there's enzymes in the bloodstream and body called trypsinase, and trypsinase, and that's actually an enzyme that dissolves certain types of protein. Well, that's okay where it dissolves protein where it needs to be, but you don't want it dissolving protein in the structures of the lungs. So you have this anti-alpha trypsin in the body to protect the lungs, and if they have a deficiency of that, sometimes you can have that. It's almost like a mild autodigestion of the lungs. I mean, that's a really crude analogy, but there's probably a genetic susceptibility that contributed to that.
Do you have any snake oil stories? Do people come in to you say, "Oh, I got COPD, but I know how to fix it. I looked it up on the internet."
Yeah, we hear that all the time.
Yeah,
and sometimes they know. And a lot of times people know what they're talking about. Sometimes they don't. But one thing I'd mention, we talk about the diagnosis of COPD and all the different things we can do with the X-rays and tests. The first thing in diagnosis of COPD is talk to the patient.
What does that tell you?
That tells you they tell you what symptoms they've been having. They'll tell you what you've been feeling. They'll tell you what's happened in the past. They'll tell you what works in the past, and what's even more important, what didn't work in the past, because you really don't want to drive them down the same road that didn't work.
It seems like Ocala has cleaner air than the bigger cities.
This is wonderful here.
I don't know because I've never studied it. It just looks like it's cleaner.
Compared to other cities, yes.
So do you have patients who move here from the bigger cities who actually improve when they get here?
Yes,
or after they've been here? Yeah.
Yes,
we do.
Because they have, when they live in bigger cities, they have breathing issues, and now since they've been here, the breathing improve in the humidity.
Gary, we are up to the end, so doctors, thank you for doing what you do each month like this.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Gary, you want to take us out? Got any announcements?
I sure do. I just wanted to tell you, come see us in the beautiful new Veterans Resource Center at 2730 East Silver Springs Boulevard. We'll give you a tour if you want, or you can call us at 352-433-2320. And, we're blessed with a great center, and we'd love to see you. It's there for you veterans. So for Hank Whittier, I just want to say, God bless America.
Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountain.